Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our series of lessons on the Anglo-Saxons. So, welcome back to Anglo-Saxon England in 1066. My goodness, it's all about to kick off. So, just a reminder of where we are up to. Poor old Edward the Confessor has died at the start of 1066, and his brother-in-law Harold Godwinson has very quickly been proclaimed king by the Witan or the King's Council. And that's the start of Harold's battle to be king. And it's something we see in history that actually getting into power is kind of step one, but often keeping that power once you've got it is a lot harder and a lot more complicated. And we're going to see that with Harold Godwinson. We're going to see it with William when he becomes king. And Harold Godwinson is very aware of this. He knows he is King of England, which is lovely, but it's not going to be that easy to hang on to the throne. Lots of people want to take it from him. Lots of people think they have a claim. England's a very wealthy country. There are lots of reasons why people will be looking to fight him. And he's going to fight a series of battles in 1066. What we're going to look at this lesson is the first one, which is the Battle of Gate Fullford, which if you've done this topic before in year 7, you might not be familiar with this one. So there are 3 battles in 1066. In year 7, we tend to do the second and third battle. We tend to skip this one. So don't worry if you're not familiar with it. But I've put the 3 battles up there for you because people do mix them up, which is understandable. So the exam board want you to know what happens at each one, who's fighting. And it's that bit that people get confused. People are like, which one are the Vikings out? Where are the Saxons out? So I've listed them all for you here because I think actually when you see it written down like this, it becomes a lot simpler. So we can see that the Saxons are at every single battle, which makes sense because it's their country and their king and they're defending it. So actually that's half the memorizing you need to do is just remember the Saxons are at every single battle. And then we can see there they're fighting Vikings, and the Normans. So just remember, if it's the Battle of Hastings, it's the Normans. If it's not Hastings, it's not the Normans. It's Vikings. So we've got Gate Fulford and Stamford Bridge, which is Saxons versus Vikings. It's kind of a rematch, but with different people fighting. And then Hastings, Saxons versus Normans. So Saxons in every battle, Normans just at Hastings. So we are looking first then at the Battle of Gate Fullford. So you can see on the map there, we are up in the north of England and we're just south of York. Gate Fulford's a very small place. Really, its claim to fame is this, the Battle of Gate Fullford. So it's just below the city of York and it's going to be invaded by the Vikings. Poor Harold Godwinson is down on the south coast and he is waiting for William and the Normans. So he knows that William is invading, which is really interesting, possibly because William had such a good relationship with Edward the Confessor. Do you remember Edward the Confessor was half Norman? He grew up in Normandy. Edward the Confessor and William's father were cousins, were really close friends. They grew up together as brothers. It is not unlikely that Edward the Confessor wanted William to be his heir. Also, remember Harold's embassy to Normandy, and we're not quite sure why that happened, but if you believe the Norman version of events, Harold actually promised William the throne. So, however far it got, certainly Harold knows that William is coming. So, he is hanging out on the south coast. He's got an army together, Saxon fighters, Saxon farmers who've got weapons who are waiting for him. And then poor Harold gets the news that, yep, there has been an invasion, but it's not William in the south, it's the Vikings up in the north. So the people who are involved. So the Viking king of Norway, Harald Hardrada, has invaded. Hardrada's such an interesting person. He's a brilliant fighter. He's 7 foot tall. He's been fighting his way around Europe. He became king of Norway by fighting. So he takes the throne in battle. And for most people, that would be enough being king of Norway. Not for this guy. He's like, I'm getting on a bit. I've probably got one more great invasion in me. Why don't I try and become king of England? It's kind of can-do attitude we can all learn from. We're not quite sure where he got the idea, but we think it might have been in Scotland where he comes across Tostig Godwinson. So if we remember dear old Tostig, he's Harold Godwinson's brother. He's one of those Godwinson earls. He was Earl of Northumbria, did an absolutely terrible job. And you'll remember from that lesson, he was sent into exile by Harold Godwinson. So remember, Edward the Confessor was kind of thinking along the lines that he was going to support Tostig, put him back as Earl. Harold Godwinson's like, absolutely not, kick my brother out of the country, he is rubbish. So Tostig and Harold are not getting on, to say the least. And Tostig, if you remember, runs north to his friend Malcolm, King of Scotland. It is possible that that's where he met Hardrada. So Tostig has come back to England and he's come back as part of the Viking army. And this is terrible news for Howard Godwinson. Even if you take away that kind of family link, the fact that they're brothers, it's terrible news because Tostig has just been Earl of Northumbria, which includes York. So he spent the last decade building up the defences, learning the weaknesses, the bits of Yorkshire that he was like, oh, I really hope no one invades there because that's going to be really hard to defend. He knows this place like the back of his hand, and he knows his brother. He knows how he thinks, his tactics. So this is a formidable team. Harold Hardrada and Tostig Godwinson. And then if we look at the other side, no disrespect to them, but the Saxon defenders are nowhere near a match. So we've got the Earls Edwin and Morcar. So these are brothers. We have met them before. If you remember, Edwin is Earl of Mercia, which when we looked at the earldoms, it was the only earldom that wasn't held by Godwinson. When Tostig Godwinson gets kicked out of the country, Edwin's brother Morcar is given the role of Earl of Northumbria. You might also remember they have a sister Edith of Mercia, who's married to Harold Godwinson. So their sister is currently Queen of England. She gets to be Queen of England for a few months. So Harold Godwinson is their brother-in-law. So they've come out from York to defend. It's actually a very straightforward battle. Most battles at the time were quite short affairs. So you sort of line up one side of the field and your enemy line up the other side of the field and you kind of clash. And within sort of an hour or so, it's all over. And the Battle of Fullford does actually go along those lines quite simply. So we can see that York is off to the north of that picture. So Edwin and the soldiers from Mercia come south from York. Morcar and the soldiers from Northumbria come down and they face off Hardrada and Tostig. So, last little bit you need to do. What happens when they fight? So, it's about 200, 300 warships arrive. Harold Hardrada, Tostig Godwinson. There are some Saxons for Tostig. He's got some men with him that are considered weaker, but around 10,000 Vikings. So every single man on those ships was a battle-hardened, well-trained, ferocious Viking. 9,000 of them marched to York, 1,000 stayed behind at the boats to guard them. Edward and Morcar come out to meet them at Gate Fullford, hence the Battle of Gate Fullford. The Saxons, bless them, are outnumbered. They've only got 6,000 men. And these men, and we'll look at the Saxon army, are what's called the Third. So these are, majority of them, Saxon farmers who come with weapons, farming implements, things like that, to fight. So they're tough, they're physically tough. They spend all day out in the fields farming by hand. So they're physically strong, but they're not used to battle in the same way that the Vikings are. So 9,000 battle-hardened Vikings are going to take on 6,000 farmers. So Tostig, like I said, did have some weaker soldiers. So Hardrada actually uses that to his advantage. So Hardrada, really clever commander, he puts Tostig's weaker forces on one side to try and tempt the Saxons to attack them. That absolutely works. Edwin and Walker fall for it. They attack Tostig's men, at which point Hardrada counterattacks with his very best troops. So the Saxons try to pull back. So they try to flee back to York, but they get stuck in a marsh that's behind them. So marsh is like waterlogged ground. It's like boggy ground. So if you think how hard it is to walk through mud, they get trapped in the marsh behind them and they're killed. It's huge Saxon losses at the Battle of Gate Fulford. The Vikings boasted that there were so many Saxon dead they could walk across the marsh without getting their boots muddy. So we can take that with a pinch of salt because it's a boast, but you can get the sense of just what an incredible victory this is for the Vikings. So Hardrada and Tostig take the city of York. They don't sack it, probably because their plan is Hardrada will become King of England, Tostig will go back to being Earl of Northumbria, and York is the capital city of Northumbria. Tostig doesn't want his main city destroyed. And they wait for Howard Godwinson, and they are unbelievably confident, as you would imagine. So far, everything is going exactly the way they thought it would. They are having enormous success. That overconfidence, though, is going to come back to bite them. So join me for the next lesson where Howard Godwinson himself is going to come up to York.